Hi, I'm Heather. Welcome to class. In our practice today, we're going to focus on impulse control. We've all got our habits, our tendencies, and our impulses, and yoga can help teach us to refrain from impulses. For example, when we practice holding poses and we discipline ourselves to stay in the pose without following that impulse to come out of the pose, that can really have a ripple effect in our day-to-day lives.
Before we begin, if you find this video helpful, be sure to like and subscribe.
Let's start in Adho Mukha Svanasana, downward facing dog pose. Stretch forward, create the distance between the hands and the feet. When you're ready, lift your hips up, straighten the legs, straighten the arms. Establish the lift through the sitting bones. And in your own time, descend the heels. And as you descend the heels, maintain the lift through the sitting bones, the straightening of the spine. And remember, we have the intention to stay. So as we stay, we want to become quite still. In the initial stages of the pose, we might make some adjustments. But then, as we intend to stay, we want to become quite still, quite steady in the body. We want to focus on the breath, steady the gaze, and soften the facial muscles. So as we tend to those things, the steadying of the gaze, steadying of the posture, the softening of the facial muscles, those things can help soothe and settle the nerves, the nervous system, which in turn can help the mind to become steady, which may help with that impulse to want to come out of the pose. So notice any tendency you have to want to flee from the pose when it starts to become challenging. Clearly, as we hold the pose, the muscles may fatigue. But more than that, the mind might become restless. So we notice as the mind becomes restless, how the body might want to fidget, or how we might find a reason to come out of the pose. Can you stay steadfast, disciplined, maintaining the hold of the pose? Let's walk the hands back to the feet now, and we'll come to Uttanasana. So if you feel stiff, you could put bricks underneath your hands, particularly if you're feeling that you've got a weakness in the lower back that you need to support. But if you have the capacity, you can take the hands out wide, be on the fingertips, fold more deeply into Uttanasana. Keep the knees straight. So we're opening the back of the knees. But you're not hyperextending the knees, so don't jam the knees back. Feel that the femur bones are lifting directly up into the pelvis as the pelvis is rolling forward over the femur bones. Maintain the grip of the kneecaps. And again, as we intend to hold and sustain the posture, can you find a steady position where you don't need to make any more adjustments? There's the movement of the breath, however. Observe the movement of the breath. Use the breath to nourish you in the pose. And can you feel the abdomen, the abdominal contents gently retreat back towards the back abdominal wall as you exhale?
Again, use the breath, the steadying of the breath, the steadying of the body within the pose, the steadying of your gaze, the softening of the facial muscles to help you stay in the pose with some ease. So we can acknowledge that there's a challenge in maintaining the pose, but can we still maintain some sense of ease within the effort? And you might notice an impulse to want to come out of the pose, to want to bend the knees, to want to stand up. Stay with the pose. Resist that impulse. So we're practicing restraint. Now we'll slowly come up and out of the pose. Place your hands on the waist, raise the head up, and lift the head a little higher than the heart as you pause at this halfway point. So you're bringing your spine parallel to the floor. And particularly if you're supple in the hamstrings, watch that the pelvis isn't still tilted forward so much the lower back's digging in. Can you draw the sit bones down enough that the lower back has a length and a broadness to it? Sternum forward, shoulder tips back away from the floor, elbows point up towards the ceiling. And we're sustaining the pose, effortless effort. So we can acknowledge there's effort required to maintain the pose, but can we find a sense of effortlessness through the use of the breath, the steadying of the breath, the settling of the gaze on one point, and the softening of the facial muscles. And then let's come to stand up all the way. And as we stand up, draw the tailbone down. You can use your hands. So if you've got your hands on the top rim of the back of the pelvis, use your hands to draw the back of the pelvis down to help to elongate the lower back, tailbone down, pubis to navel up, and the shoulder tips pressing back and down. And just be mindful that you're not pushing the belly forward. The kneecaps are still gripping, thigh muscles still active. Gently press the thighs back and the buttocks forward. Zip the navel up and let's stretch the fingertips down. So we're in Tadasana. Maintain some space here between the armpit, chest and the upper arms as the shoulders are still rolling back and down. And we stay. We have the feet hip width apart, the feet are parallel to each other. And as we stay, we settle the gaze on one point. And we observe whether there are any tendencies to want to shift our posture, to want to make any adjustments, to want to scratch an itch, for the eyes to want to flit from point to point. Just observe. So yoga is as much a practice of observation as it is about the action of doing the postures. Sthira Sukhamasana. Steadiness and ease within the posture. Let's raise the arms. Urdhva Hastasana. So we have shoulder width hands. Lift the arms up. And you might like to look up at the hands for a moment. Just see, are the hands shoulder width? Have you moved them back the same amount? You know, sometimes one shoulder's more mobile than the other, one hand reaches further back. So notice that. Stretch the arms up. And then you're settling the gaze forward, eyes at eye level. And still we're maintaining the firmness in the thighs.
You've still got the grip of the kneecaps, the thighs are pressing back, buttocks pressing forward. Lower back is lengthening as the tailbone descends. Pelvic abdominal area lifts, pubis to navel lifting. And as we're raising the arms up, the entire circumference of the rib cage is lifting away from the pelvis. Smooth, steady breathing. Soften your gaze. Keep the facial muscles soft. And then let's exhale. Bring the arms forward and down. And you can relax the arms and the legs for a moment. We're going to work with Parsvottanasana next, and I'm going to demonstrate with bricks. This is specifically helpful for anyone who feels stiff, having bricks underneath the hands. So as you place your bricks, you can either have them blade shape or on their highest height, depending on how stiff you feel in the legs. But let's step the right foot between the bricks and stride the left leg back. Take the length of one of your legs between the feet. But then as you plug the back heel, roll the outer left hip forward, draw the outer right hip back. Let's raise the arms up. Lift up the rib cage. And again, with this idea of practicing restraint and impulse control, we're going to come forward parallel to the floor and hold there. So as you fold forward, hinge forward. If you're feeling that this is very challenging, stay in the diagonal line. But if you're strong, come further forward and down, more in that parallel line to the floor. Plug the back heel. If it's really challenging, place your hands on the waist. But still we're restraining ourselves from going further down, restraining ourselves from placing the hands down. Maintain the grip of the kneecaps, pressurize the ball of the right foot into the floor. And then finally, let's place the hands on the bricks, sternum forward. And if you have the mobility, you can bend the elbows, fold all the way down into the pose. Paschimottanasana, the side intense stretch pose. Spin the inner left thigh back so that the outer left hip can move forward. Draw the shoulder blades away from the head and breathe smoothly. As you maintain the smooth, steady breath rate, ideally that's helping to keep the sense of ease, maintaining the sense of ease as we hold the pose. Facial muscles quiet. Now, as we come up, raise the head, bring the torso parallel to the floor. Plug the back heel as you sit your hands on your waist. Inhale all the way up, and let's swap legs. So we'll step the left foot between the bricks. Stride the right leg back. Plug the right heel and move that outer right hip forward and draw the outer left hip back. As I said when we were doing the other side, if it's very challenging for you to maintain the spine parallel to the floor with the arms above the head, then keep your hands on the waist. But if you are feeling strong, let's raise the arms up, lift the navel up, inhale, exhale as you fold forward. And again, if it's very challenging, you can stay more on this diagonal line as you sustain this posture. But if you can manage, you challenge yourself a little more, bring your spine, your arms more and more parallel to the floor. Pressurize the ball of the left foot into the floor as you cut the outer left hip back. And go on plugging the right heel strongly into the floor, strong in that anchor point. Settle the gaze. And then reach your hands
to the bricks. Draw the chest forward and go on rolling this outer left hip back. Then if you have the capacity, you can bend the elbows, fold forward over the leg, forward towards the shin. But no contorting of the facial muscles. So you might be working with a great deal of effort to bring yourself into this forward bend. And just notice, does the face get screwed up in discomfort? Can you relax there? Relax the jaw, relax the tongue, relax the throat, relax the neck, relax the forehead. All the while you're still steady in the breath. Quiet around the eyes. Your gaze is soft and quiet. As we practice those points of awareness, that can help us sustain the pose with greater ease. Restraining the impulse to come out of the pose. And then let's slowly raise the head up. So you can push into the hands to help you do that. Draw the sternum forward. Plug the back heel, hands to the waist. Inhale, stand all the way up, and then step out of the pose. Let's come to Tadasana, legs together. Stretch down to the fingertips. Lift into the crown of the head. In fact, let's challenge ourselves by putting a brick on our crown. Be mindful if you've got heavy bricks, if they're wooden bricks or cork bricks, be very careful that they don't fall onto your toes. Feet together, unless you don't feel steady with your feet together. If you prefer to have your feet apart, you feel more steady, that's fine, take your feet apart. Otherwise, feet together and hold the brick for a moment and pull the brick down onto the head as you press the head up into the brick. And get the feeling that your neck is lengthening as you press the head up into the brick. When you're ready, then let go of the brick. Let's see if it stays there. Stretch the arms down. So this requires a bit of concentration to keep the brick there, to keep the body steady. Maintaining our Tadasana legs, our Tadasana pelvic abdominal lift. Thighs pressing back, buttocks forward, tailbone down, pubis to navel up. And with an expansive chest, you want the sternum to be lifted, collarbones to be broad as the shoulder tips press back and down. Set your gaze on one point. And then we'll slowly take the arms out, shoulder height. Turn the palms up and inhale. Raise the arms up and bring the upper arms to the brick if you can manage. So upper arms coming in contact with the brick if possible, and go on descending the tailbone. Squeeze the brick with the arms. And lift the back ribs, particularly the back ribs, away from the back of the pelvis. And then as you grip the brick, lift it up and bring it forward all the way. We're going to come to sit down now and practice some impulse control in seated forward bends. Let's use our two bricks to sit on, and we'll bring a belt around the feet. Sit on your two bricks, stretch the legs forward, and let's use our belt in such a way that if the loop's fairly large, we can put that loop behind the feet and hold on, but ideally with the spine sitting straight upwards, vertical. So if your belt is long enough, you use the belt in such a way that you've got handles to hold on to. Lift the chest. And remember that the
lift of the chest stems from the lift in the lumbar spine. So the pelvis needs to roll forward, the top of the sacrum needs to move in, lumbar spine in, and the chest can lift. So as we hold, sternum broad, collarbones broad, outer shoulders down, and set your gaze on one point. Eyes at eye level. Keep the legs firm, so you're maintaining that quality of tone in the quadriceps, kneecaps, flattening into the knee joint. Smooth, steady breathing. As we're holding the pose, we're settling the gaze, we're not being distracted by having the eyes focus on anything in particular. We're able to tune in a little more to the sensations in the body, but possibly we're also able to detach ourselves from those strong sensations. And at the moment, there may or may not be a stretch for you in the back of the legs, but we're certainly working with the strength in the legs, the strength in the spinal muscles. Feeling the sitting bones as they're anchored into the bricks. So it can be useful to use bricks underneath the sitting bones sometimes when we're doing these seated poses, because they're a hard platform, different than sitting on a blanket. We can feel the sitting bones as they anchor down. Now let's take the belt off the feet and we'll hold the belt shoulder width apart. Raise the arms up. Pull on the belt in such a way that the elbows straighten. Squeeze the elbow tips in and feel that you're lifting up from the waist, that the pelvis is anchoring down into your bricks as you drive the head of the thighs down. And as the pelvis is anchoring down through the sitting bones into the bricks, you've got that rebound lift through the torso. The waist is lengthening as the rib cage lifts away from the pelvis. The arms are lifting, stretching away from the waist. And all the while, arms are strong and straight. The gaze is set on one point. We're steady here. And again, noticing at what point does any impulse come up for you to pull out of the pose. See if you can challenge yourself to hold, to remain steady, remain quiet within. So what do you have to do to remain quiet within? And I've given some pointers. You settle the gaze on one point. You soften your gaze. You soften the facial muscles. And you get steady in the breath. Now, on our exhalation, we're going to come forward and reach the belt around the feet. So if you're stiff, you come back more to where we were. But if you're supple in the hamstrings, you reach the hands all the way to the feet. Press the thighs down as you lift the chest up. So again, there's this rebound. As you drive the head of the thighs down, the torso rebounds up, the chest lifts up. We're keeping the spine strong and straight, but if possible, we're leaning diagonally forward over the legs. Still maintaining that length on the front body, the same distance between the breastbone and the navel as you had when you were sitting upright in Dandasana. Outer shoulders down. Smooth, steady breathing as you fix your gaze on one point. Now you may already be at that point of challenge in the hamstrings. If you do have further to go, if the hamstrings are willing, if the lower back is willing, the pelvis can roll forward, you can flex the spine with relative ease. Draw yourself further forward into Paschimottanasana. Lengthen the crown of the head towards your feet. Lengthen the sternum forward towards the feet. Keep the elbows up, the same height as the shoulders, so that encourages the armpit chest to lengthen forward and not collapse down. Go on opening the back of the knees. If you have a tendency to hyperextend the knees, you may need to put a little roll of blanket underneath the knees here because we're sitting on the height of the bricks. Keep the legs firm. And again, as we're holding, notice at what point is there an impulse to come out of the pose. Observe yourself. Practice restraint. Do your best to become steady and quiet within amidst the challenge of holding the pose. Smooth, slow, steady breathing. Your eyes are soft. Jaw is relaxed. Slowly raise the head up, lift the chest up, let go of the belt, sit in Dandasana. You can turn the fingertips back to help roll the shoulders back. Stay in Dandasana, settle your gaze, quiet and steady within. And then you can release the hold. That was a reasonably short practice with the idea of holding postures and challenging ourselves to hold at particular points of perhaps entering a pose where we might not ordinarily hold, as well as holding within the pose itself. And that type of practice, as I mentioned, can really help with impulse control, obviously not just on our mat, but in our day-to-day life. And that can be of great benefit. That's it for today. Thanks for joining me.
For more in-depth teaching, check out the video library on my website, heatherkitchenyoga.com.au. The link is in the description box below.